I cannot tell you how hard it is to distinguish between what is noise, what is real, and more importantly, what fits me as an organization. That's the landscape today. So if you're a president or a provost or a leader, you constantly hear AI. And what we want to do in the next 40 minutes, we try to separate tools from transformations versus tools from just buzz and AI stickers.
Welcome to Generation AI, where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. I'm your host, Ardis Kadiu, and today with me is Dr. JC Bonilla. Hey, JC, how's it going?
I'm doing much better than you, my friend. You sound like you're inside a box full of mucus. How are you feeling, my friend?
Yeah. Traveling has not been very kind to me. I've been traveling. So I was traveling for pleasure. I was at Oktoberfest last week. Came back, and now I'm in San Francisco for OpenAI Dev Day. So by the time this episode drops, it'll probably be Tuesday. It will be the day after. So I'll be there. I'm here with Petter, and probably we're gonna try to do some recording as well, and perhaps give you guys some updates from that as well. But yeah, it's my first time in SF. Can you believe that?
Oh my, I no, I cannot believe that. So I mean, I'm very bi-coastal, so New York and San Fran, I have a special place in my heart, as you can imagine. Also, as a New Yorker, I hope you like the San Fran vibe, and yeah, I hope you feel better. And I let me reframe: you're not full of mucus, you're full of beard, coming from Oktoberfest, right? So
hmm It is definitely an experience for sure.
the best, right? So send pictures of you wearing awesome leather and gigantic jugs of beer. Feel better, my friend, and keep us posted. Just what are the first things that you're seeing on the Dev conference at OpenAI? Are you seeing any different kind of crowds? Like, how does it feel being there?
It will. So the Dev Day is tomorrow. We're recording this on the Sunday, October 5th, and Dev Day is tomorrow. So all the sessions and the keynotes. I don't know if they're going to announce anything new, but we're certainly going to bring that up during our next episode as they do that. So
Cannot wait.
not there yet.
All right, well, not there yet, but where we are is in a special episode today because we are kicking off a special three-part series. We're calling this the AI Buyer's Playbook, and it's designed for our crowd, our friends, our audience, the intersect between higher education, technology, EdTech, who are asking, with all this AI noise out there, what's real? What's the hype? And literally what would work for my institution, my school, or my own enterprise. Not only for higher education professionals, but anyone who is in position of leadership who's trying to bring AI into different places. So I hope this is a very meaningful one. So
Yeah, for sure. And this is like JC said, the goal here is for us to give leaders like a no BS map on the AI landscape, really kind of the different layers of how they think about the enterprise layers and the selection and why that matters and how to kind of evaluate the data, the user, the integration realities before that dazzling demo that you were given by an AI company you signed on the contract. So today, every kind of SaaS today has AI, right? And most of it is lipstick. Not a lot of folks have gone kind of further. So there's just a lot of still ambiguity of what's going on in that lipstick. And what we think and what we see is that the winners embed AI where your data is, where your people work, and where decisions happen. So today, we're going to talk about how you tell the difference between all those different.
So, everybody, we have a plan for you, and our roadmap consists of the following three episodes. This conversation today, Ardis and I will take on foundations. What are the types of AI products and how to ground your buying decisions into frameworks? Think about how to use cases playbook, understanding the landscape of all things AI, so that we make these decisions, you hit the ground running. Therefore, we can do episode 2. That is that evaluation component. And how do you do implementation? How is I thinking about, all right, I'm going to shortlist, I'm going to compare them, and actually this is what I'm going to go buy, and how do I start basically doing those first steps? To the last point, and this is where a lot of our expertise and I guess narrative has been gravitating towards too in the last episodes in this podcast. So we're talking about adoption. adoption is king. And what we know is that running from a POC, a pilot, to actually a full deployment of workflow, it's hard. So we talk about how do you avoid failure or fatigue, creating adoption paths that can really help you to anchor one and two, the use cases, the foundation, the playbooks, the checkpoints, if you will, into success. So really, really exciting episodes here, right, Ardis?
Yeah, exactly. So foundations today, we're going to lay the groundwork and talk about the different types of AI and how to think about them, bucket them, and the questions that you ask, and kind of what's important in each one of those, and how they affect kind of the results or the outcomes that you're trying to get. The second one is more, like JC said, like short list, comparing different tools, and then kind of how they fit into that workflow. So more practical and that framework. And then number three, like JC said, another recap is, okay, today you don't have the longevity of understanding that AI, how it's going to affect your processes. So most likely you need to do a proof of concept to kind of taste and to see how, if this thing is actually real and how it works. And we're going to talk about like, how do you do a proof of concept? Not a lot of folks are very familiar with it. And we see over and over again that things really fall short of that. So we essentially want to give you a playbook for in episode 3. It's like, what are the questions? What are, how do you lay out and how do you do a POC? So foundations, vendor evaluation, framework, and then how do you actually run a POC in number 3?
Oh, I'm excited, and I really hope that all of you, friends, followers, and clients, because we have a lot of our Element clients here, enjoy this, and it's a reflection of where our head is at, but also the signals that we're picking up from the field, if you will. Speaking of that, Ardis, let's jump into foundations. The first conversation I want to have, it's what I call AI noise in higher education, but we can say AI noise in blank, any sector they're in. Today I was having brunch with some friends, all about New York finance sector. It's all the same story. It doesn't matter where you're coming from, if you're higher education, marketing, finance, healthcare, whatever you do, there's a lot of noise. So let me paint the picture. That's actually 2 weekends ago. I mean, one of the most successful, well-attended conferences in our sector is called NACAC. You are going to be attending EDUCAUSE. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the thing that you see as well. AI stickers everywhere, right? So in the story, it's grounded on data, right? Everyone wants it. Everyone needs to have an AI deployment. 70% of IOs today in higher education say it's one of the first 3 priorities.
I think that's probably even higher. It's probably even higher today, right? Don't you think?
100%, right? This data, it's like everything in AI, right? It's trailing at least 6 months, so we know that things have changed. But what we also know with this data, when it's reported, at that point, 18% of the campuses actually have deployed it in terms of campus-wide strategies. So the intent for purchasing, it's higher than the deployment, which is one of the things that we're talking about. Therefore, the ecosystem of vendors knows that everyone wants it, and it's overwhelming. I cannot tell you how hard it is to distinguish between what is noise, what is real, and more importantly, what fits me as an organization. That's the landscape today. So if you're a president or a provost or a leader, you constantly hear AI. And what we want to do in the next 40 minutes, we're going to try to separate tools from transformations versus tools from just buzz and AI stickers. All right, so Ardis, one of the things that I'd like us to start thinking about is defining what is the problem here, right? And I'm going to set this up so you can take over and give us a very in-depth view of the ecosystem of products, right? But when we think about AI as a sticker everywhere, you need to understand that there's confusion on categories. And that's part of the problem, right? As we look to find the right solution for us, the signal and the noise needs to be driven and guided by the use cases. So what we are seeing throughout our experience as we talk to clients is that this clarity, or lack of clarity, if you will, is creating wasted spend. Resources are being bought in AI. You launch pilots, or you cannot even launch a pilot, and nothing is being showcased, right? We have some data from IDC that estimates that between 30 and $40 billion were spent in generative AI in 2024. And we also have data from MIT suggesting 95% of these first investment kind of generated very little results. These two sources that I linked, they're not perfect, but directionally they seem right. A ton of spending, and many institutions, partners, organizations, leaders are lacking the understanding of how to bring this home. So the first thing we like to do in this case is, artists, how do we start thinking about the landscape of products, knowing that the first thing I would say someone needs to understand is that there's product categories, and linking the use cases, what you're trying to the category, is super important. So I'll leave you with this question so you can take us into product categories and how do we want to go here, right? So the setup is, the question isn't, do you have AI? The question is more, do you have AI that solves a real problem for your school, your team, or your enterprise? Artists?
Yeah, and that's really the big question that we're being faced today. AI, it's not some sprinkle or pixie dust or whatever that you throw and basically makes everything better. It's
It does feel like
actually
magic. It does feel like magic
it
sometimes.
does. It does, but in terms of how it transforms already existing tools and existing processes, it's all about how do you take a process and essentially automate that process? How do you take intelligence and kind of work together with it? So we have this three different categories that we're going to divide things into. Number one is what we're calling general assistance, right? So this is the chat first utilities that can point at many tasks like drafting, research, tutoring, so on and so forth. And when we talk about that, it's obviously the biggest AI assistance is ChatGPT. So these are general purpose AI assistants. ChatGPT EDU is one that a lot of schools are using right now. It's an enterprise version that's that's part of OpenAI. You also have Google Gemini, which includes the Gemini for students with the AI Pro. It has things in terms of classroom integration work in there, et cetera. And then you have Microsoft Copilot, which is another one. So we know a lot of the higher ed institutions, they're either a Google shop or they're a Microsoft shop. So Microsoft Copilot is probably that. You probably have seen that. And then on top of that, there's a couple other ones that are a little bit more, assistants like Claude, for example. That's one that we've seen, and we use them internally. We also have seen Perplexity, which is another general assistant. So all of these assistants at the core, essentially they're the fastest time to value, and then there is very low integration lift with them because somebody can use them today to kind of get up to speed and to do the things that are like many tasks, like I said, like writing and drafting and researching. Some of these general assistants have integrated and starting to bleed into the data sources that they need in order for them to become a little bit more smarter about your enterprise and how that works. But what we're seeing today is ChatGPT has a big footprint and growing really fast, ChatGPT EDU. So a lot of institutions are adopting it and they're giving it to their students, they're giving it to their faculty members, and they're giving it to their staff as a productivity tool, right? So that, JC, I don't know if you have any good examples, but last year we saw that Arizona State University was the first one to essentially bring ChatGPT to all of their institutions, and since then they've worked with OpenAI to make the .edu version, and they've incorporated a lot of new tools in there as part of that to essentially connect with different data sources and so on and so forth. So that's the first category, which is general assistance, and everybody's going to need some kind of general assistant to work alongside with them to use them for general tasks. Does that sound okay?
100%. So I have one comment and a question for you as we move forward. So General Assistant is that fastest way to experience Feel AI, and many of us have had it there. Let's make a distinction between I use ChatGPT for myself, right? And I can bring it into my university or whatever institution I am, versus what you just described of an enterprise deployment of ChatGPT where I use ChatGPT.edu, and it's maybe a different deployment of me having my personal account and I'm doing, GPT-like things in the classroom or in my, I don't know, admissions office. So which one are we talking about? A bottom up or the enterprise? Just can we put guardrails on what type of definitions we're going to be using here and examples?
Yeah. So all of the things that we're talking about today are how you buy AI for your institution. So everything in here are things like enterprise solutions or solutions that the IT team or the CIO office or kind of the it's based strategically being deployed in an institution. So we're not talking about individual tool usage for individual people. We're talking about deployments of these tools at the enterprise level across the institution. So ChatGPT, when it's deployed across the institution for .edu, it's the .edu version. And that has a lot of components from guardrails to things that the IT office has access to basically control. They can control what type of data sources it can use. You can go out to the internet and bring data from there or not. Maybe you can connect it to internal data sources. You can provide specific configuration, what they call GPTs. So they are configurations of kind of individualized ChatGPTs that are purpose built for certain tasks, right? So all of those pieces are part of the enterprise offering of ChatGPT, and we're not talking about the free one or the $20 one that you get on your own.
Yeah. So the two examples I'll leave you with so you can start building. So a few months ago, we learned about Georgia Tech's resume builder custom GPT that the career offices was sponsoring. So it allows a student to basically start creating their resume version of the resume based on job functions. So if it's sponsored by a university and it requires that EDU version. At Element, for example, we have multiple of these. How does it look like? We create all these knowledge bases. We interconnect all our contracts and the agreements between schools. So when a account manager or a sales professional needs to understand the state of a deal, they go there and they can ask questions. So those type of things are these general assistant type of things. Awesome. All right, let's move on.
Yeah. And I don't want to lose, you have the equivalent of that on Gemini as well. So with Google, if you're a Google shop, and you're using Gemini, that's very similar, and there's some classroom technology in there as well. That's part of that. But general assistants are, and of course, Copilot, Microsoft Copilot. So a lot of people. Now, I haven't heard amazing things about Microsoft Copilot, so I want to refrain from we'll talk a little bit more about that during the evaluation process on the second episode.
Episode 2 for that. All right.
So then we move on from kind of these general assistants to what we're calling kind of copilots and agents, right? And think about these as in-app. So these are context-aware helpers inside the tools your teams are already using. So you might have an Office 365 and you're using Copilot in Office 365. You might be using Copilot, for example, or you might be using Gemini in a Google spreadsheet or Google Docs. So you might be using AI in an LMS to create outlines, and that's the Copilot on the side. You might be using a Copilot in your CRM that's helping you draft messages or helping you build campaigns and so on and so forth. But then in this case, we're kind of grouping this together because essentially Copilots and agents, the word agent is kind of overused a little bit today, and an agent can fall under multiple categories, right? An agent is just the idea of something going through a loop and having context, having kind of reasoning, and having some kind of an action. But it doesn't specify who is working, who's triggering that action, who is in the loop, and so on and so forth, what type of data sources it has. So agents is kind of a side conversation, but the notion of tools or AI that is in your tools that you're using today, that's kind of what we're talking about, this second category. So, and again, Copilots and agents, and there's different companies that are incorporating that in your current tools. We talked about Microsoft 365 Copilots, and they have it across Word, Excel, Outlook, and really there's a deep, the feature set is pretty deep. There's a lot of new packages that kind of show up in there. We saw recently that Canvas also introduced Copilots as part of their LMS, and this is our OpenAI powered, Copilots that essentially are doing things like enable, LLM enabled assignments, grading assistance, kind of discussion summarizations, and so on and so forth. Obviously, there is the D2L from the teaching and learning with their Lumi add-ons. So there's a whole lot of this different examples. So Element 451, we have our own Copilot. So if you use the Element 451 CRM, you probably have your own Copilot on the side. You log in, and then it will help you build a full campaign. It will help you analyze different conversations. It will help you build landing pages and so on and so forth just by typing. What you see in a lot of different tools that are specific to an area, there is almost always some kind of Copilot associated with it, that it has a conversational interface to do the things that you had to press buttons before. So think about it that way. Copilots are now embedded in the tools that you use, and the complexity of those Copilots really depends on, or the effectiveness and how good they are really depends on how much data and context and what workflow is being replaced, from pressing buttons. In this case, the limits are that they're bounded by the host application, right? So whatever the app schema and what it exposes in terms of reads and writes, kind of bounded to that specific thing. But you need less context switching. So it kind of piggybacks on the existing permissions and data models. So it makes it really, really easy to trust that it's actually replacing a work that a human or somebody is doing manually.
So a category called pilots of agent, we start seeing this intelligence expanding what we can do. So let me elaborate on this. If you're listening to what we just communicated, an assistant, right, category 1, it's basically going to be feeling like that chat room, chat experience where you prompt your way through it. And in the context that you're prompting, there's some imperfect context gathering that it does. So it would give you output that I call it the last mile is still needed. And this is where actually we have other problems that you'll be seeing if you're following the developments of AI. Everyone's talking about, work slop, that, people create certain things and they don't check. It's really, really important to come and iterate and bring the output of category 1, this general assistant type of AI, to the end result. Copilots and agents, this is where we start moving from the chatbot environment, right? If in this case, AI stops being a chat window and it starts being a teammate. So let me elaborate on that. Because what you mentioned, with agents and copilots, the way they work in this context, call it the technology that they were created for, they're more verticalized and whatnot, they're much better at bringing you an end-to-end solution. That's why in Element we thrive at doing these campaigns, right? Because not only we can give you the creative, we can give you the whole content, we also send it, so it's end-to-end, because they live within the infrastructure Element has created. How do you use content blocks? How do you use our own messaging channels and whatnot? So the exciting thing about Copilots and why they feel like teammates is that extension is that within the boundaries, as you mentioned, that they created, they allow AI to go more end to end. That's why, in my opinion, the cost, and we're going to talk about this, right, of category 2 augments, and therefore the journey, the stickiness, and the process will be different.
Yeah, and my mental model for this is you're going to need, for enterprises, you're going to need 3 types of AI. You're going to need, everybody needs a general assistant, so you can throw anything at it, you can write, you can do whatever. You're going to need that no matter what. So have a way to deploy something like that for the whole institution. ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, or Claude, whatever it is, one of those 3 solutions, you're probably going to need to implement. And that goes through current students, faculty, staff. That's a productivity enhancer for everybody. A lot of institutions just stop there. And then the second part is like, well, okay, do I do that or do I do Copilot? My recommendation is go with one of those general purpose solutions because they're iterating really fast and they're getting the consumer grade, and meaning like not consumer grade, but they're really good, and everybody kind of understands what they were. The second part is, like you think about all the tools that you have, but now rather than a human pressing the buttons and doing the work of creating an asset or creating something, it's a kind of a creation component. You now have AI do that. So that's the Copilot. You tell the Copilot what to do, and the Copilot does it for you. And the extent at which that Copilot is able to do more and more complex tasks, that's kind of the evaluation process. And now we move to number 3, where you have processes and workflows that are happening either in the background, or it's a human that's running and creating something and building something and running through a workflow, and it's a whole process. So it's not a task, right? This is like a series of tasks that can be done, either at one time, or it can be done, over multiple days, or span longer periods of time. They're very complex. They can require multiple people. They can require multiple pieces of software data to incorporate through. And that's what we're calling workflow AI. This you can kind of talk about. It's more of an agentic AI. It's an example here that you're going to hear quite a bit as well. So this is end-to-end orchestration across systems. So think, CRM, SIS, LMS, or think about communication, think about, data coming in from different systems, often with semi or fully autonomous agents, right? So what that means is, semi-autonomous agents can be, where it kind of builds everything, and then now it asks you for permission to send a bunch of communications. One example here is how you can now build outbound campaigns to recruit students. And, this AI workflow, you can provide a description of a goal, and in Element, we call them like jobs, right? Those workflow automations that are AI driven. And we give it a goal, and then the AI figures out how to accomplish that goal by, constantly running in the background, understanding what the context is, and it can reach out to that student in the multiple channels based on their preferences. It can reach out on email, voice, telephone, SMS, and so on and so forth, not just once, but many, many times over a period of time, in order to get that student to fill in a form or to apply or whatever goal that we gave it. So that is a workflow AI tool that is, what we're talking about in this case, right? And like, I want to go a little bit further on this, right? And because obviously this is the part where it's the most complex, right? These are the most complex tools. And at Element, we're building we're calling those Bolt agents, but they're workflow tools that are handling things, a lot of different workflows for the school. You have another example, which you have Agentforce, very similar, but that's another vendor, which is Salesforce. And Salesforce is calling Agentforce, which is the whole idea of how do we not just answer Q&A questions, but how do we build workflows that AI decides what to do, and it handles very complex situations, and it's able to route things, it's able to solve problems, it's able to kind of run things. So that's another one. HubSpot is another vendor and I'm talking about CRMs right now, because these processes, or these this workflow AIs are best in they need a lot of context and data, right? So they're really best. So I'm talking about HubSpot AI is another one that does some of this work. JC, what are some of the workflow AI or agentic AI platforms that you've been playing around with?
We play a lot with Relevance and the instrumentation that allows you to work with different frontier models. So from the techniques and the power behind these agents that allow you to reason and then act. One of the key features, as you mentioned, right, in workflow as a product category, is that there is some autonomous aspect that requires reasoning and then action. So with tools like Relevance, one of the things that we gain, I like to expose this through the lens of ChatGPT Model 5, right? I'm sorry, OpenAI Model 5, right? Or Gemini, or basically sometimes we've our QBRs artists, they run on DeepSeek for last month, and then we just basically switch them because we're trying to find economies of scale. So there's this aspect of sometimes you borrow the technology that allows you to do the workflow the best, and you start switching. Even in Element, we have the similar point of view that when we go from voice, let's say models, sometimes you're switching the technology behind the scenes because you want to give the workflow that allows the execution to be the best. One more point for me to note as we talk about this, there's an aspect of maturity here. And the technologies that we use also start changing on that maturity, right? Because on product category 1, you're chatting with AIs, and there's things that allow you to do that. You're working with AI now, right? That was the kind of the agent mode category 2. But now in workflow, you're personalizing with AI, and deploying workflow there. It goes beyond technology, artists. So to complement your expansion around technology, it is also how we start thinking about, the hardest part of like having the clean data and the clean permissions, but also the culture that comes with it. And that is a really important distinction, that the tool and the people start coming together as you relate to category number 3.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be honest, like the strength of basically where workflow AI and agentic AI, like when we're talking about workflow, is there's measurable outcomes that come out of it. Like you can't measure productivity. Like no matter how much you try, is this person going to do this faster? So in that Copilot or even in the general assistants, you can't really measure productivity there. It's like, there's going to be some productivity, and that's a big challenge, but you can't really measure it. Here, there's measurable outcomes. It's like I implemented this workflow that was done by a person, or we couldn't do at all. And then we can see there's a clear conversion lift. There is a clear response time. There's clear error reduction rates because it acts across, the system and the data. And it's usually replacing a manual work that is being done by a human, or it's replacing a process and scaling a process across thousands or millions of thousands or hundreds of thousands of individual people. So, but it's the heaviest lift, because usually what it means that it needs kind of a change management to think through how do you implement something that you might not be doing today, or something that is manual, or something that is, 5 different systems are working on 5 different tools. How do you change that process to be AI workflow ready with agents, so agents can do the work? And it's the heaviest lift because it needs that identity, it needs the data contracts and data connectors. It needs the observability and the change management. And this is where I would say Element really shines, because we have built all of that part as part of Element, and all those connectors and everything. And we feel that this is something that when we move forward at some point, all of the workflow needs to be done in the context of where the data is, right? And that's something we're going to talk about. So assistants suggest, Copilots contextualize, and workflow AI transforms. So if you want to think about it that way, it's like it's a little bit of that value chain there. It's like you get suggestions with assistants, Copilots contextualize because you have part of your data, they're within your tools, they can do the work. And then workflows are about transformation. So if you really want transformation, you have to think about how do you implement this agentic workflow AIs as part of your transformation, which leads to change management, right? Workflow management and change management.
In Ardis, for everybody listening to this, right? Most of our technology, specifically all our agents, live in that third tier, right? And they're not only summarize, they assist. I think they execute. So, do you feel our agents are that workflow, that category, and to the lens of transformation, right? That's the part that is really interesting. Let me actually sandwich 2 questions in one. So, I believe that a lot of technology does this, right? And it's interesting for you to riff on it. The second thing is, I see most vendors, and as I do the ecosystem, they kind of stop at suggestion, and that's kind of where the majority of the landscape of AI signals or vendors are at the moment. And not everybody's going into the action mode because, to your point, it takes longer and is harder to do because you're in digital transformation domain. So react to those questions as you see it, as you know, the inspiration, innovation behind our agents, that transformative. They are mostly third category, and I think most agents, and I'm sorry, most vendors are stopping at suggestion, which is category 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, so this is really hard because we get asked all the time, and the reason why we're doing this whole series is to essentially answer these questions, right? It's like, okay, people ask us, what do you guys do? Like, what are your agents
How are you
do?
different?
Right, yeah, and it's very confusing because if you don't understand how AI can be used in all these different contexts, you just don't get how deep or what the value is of the AI that you're getting. And we started this by saying you need to think about the value. You need to think about the ROI and kind of what processes and what things do you want to do. So if you want just personal productivity from people, great, you can do the assistants. If you want copilots to say, hey, I want some guardrails, I want my data in there, and so on and so forth. I want it to be within the tools to increase productivity. Great, that's there as well. And an element, we actually have that. So we don't have a general assistant, but we have copilots. They let you build campaigns, they let you build landing pages or whatever. But it's not very transformational. It's like a person who would take maybe 5 hours to build a landing page. Now the copilot does it in like a couple of minutes. Is it transformational? Maybe not, because it's just that one person doing it. Maybe it's 5 people. So that is that is an entry level. Now, where things get more difficult is in how do you completely transform something that a person cannot do. As a person, you might have 10 counselors. You cannot reach out to 10,000 or 50,000 students in one day and send them personalized messages, individually, based on different times or whatever, to ask them to come in or to apply or to submit their application, or maybe even inquire or ask them, hey, how was your visit, right? You cannot do that. So that's a transformational workflow. And that is what that third level, and that's what we're doing. That is very, very different, right? That is very different. And it's the most complex and most built out workflow. And this is where things tend to fall apart a little bit, because people say, well, are you guys a wraparound? Are you guys a full AI CRM? And so on and so forth. And the answer is always, it doesn't matter. Like, what kind of work, what's the outcome? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? And then we can work from there and tell you why our solution is better, or maybe not, or somebody else's is better. But we start with a problem, right? And that's, a lot of folks don't understand that. So that's why, it's a little bit difficult to kind of pinpoint right now where the value of AI is in the enterprise. It's up to you. Where do you want to start, right? You can start at the high, just productivity. You can start taking AI into your own tools, or you can go full agentic, which every piece of software, and we see this in the next 2 to 3 years, and we'll talk more about that. That's where everything is moving towards, right? All the things that people are doing manually today or those work is going to move fully, automated and autonomous with agents in the future. Shall we move on a little bit in terms of what's actually happening today? Kind of move. I think we're halfway through this episode. We just need to move a little bit quicker and talk about kind of the 3 decision axis, right? It's like, how do you use them to avoid buying the wrong layer? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like us to go there because what is happening, to anchor what the 50 minutes we just did, right? The use case, the problem you're trying to solve, right? It's what needs to lead this conversation, right? And this is kind of where we're going to go now. But just keep in mind that it's not all technology. There is a version of AI that is technology with human process, digital transformation, you want to call it, and it comes with all the very interesting things. And the full realization of AI, in my opinion, is that latter one. But there's different places where you need to be. And you as an institution, you as a leader need to know where you want to start leading the conversation, and not only investing in this technology because it's the bells and whistles that it brings, but also the gain transformation that you want. So love to have the conversation, but there is so much here. All right. Let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. So when you think about the there's three kind of these decision axes, right? We're going to call the first one data gravity. So essentially, where is the truth, and can AI write back to that truth? Meaning,
The data sources, databases. Is that what truth means here?
right, exactly. The database is source of truth, and can is it AI integrated so it can write back to that? So if it's doing the work, it's not just reading something and then reporting. It's not just a reader and like a parrot, but it's also able to do work and write back. So data gravity means where's the context and where's the data. So think about so ask the CRM, SIS, LMS, whatever, versus an email or docs. So the CRM, SIS, or LMS is the source of truth. That's where the data is versus, we're talking about email and docs. So if it can't write to the system of record, you're essentially buying what's called the wrapper, not transformation. So that's the distinction here. Data gravity, it's really important axis, and you have to make a decision to think about what you're buying. And that's the truth. It's like if you can't write back to those systems, you're buying a wrapper, not a transformation. And wrappers have a very short lifespan.
So what you need to start thinking through this is with data gravity, right? An anchor of your decision is not the right vendor, but it's the right layer if you think about it. So replace vendor with layer, and how this technology needs to be wired, connector layer in so that it thrives, right? Because if it needs to send data into my CRM or SIS, it needs to do that bilateral thing. It's a totally different playbook, right? As opposed to it's on top or on the side. And this idea of wrappers kind of give you those things. Ardis, I would love to have this conversation in I guess a fourth imaginary axis of complexity. I think that wrappers should be easier because of data gravity being more lean. Do you agree?
So wrappers are not transformation, meaning that you can use them but they don't write data back to the system of record. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but there's a lot of integration work that has to happen there. And then things change, so they don't have the full context. Basically, the wrappers usually have lower intelligence and lower context, which leads to, if you don't have the full context of that data, of that workflow, or whatever you're doing, it leads to poor decisions that the LLMs or the decision engine is making. And you cannot build this complex workflows with it as you think, because it just doesn't have the full context. So yes, you can use the wrappers to do certain things, but they're not fully transformative. Like they're not going to go in and eliminate this very long multi-step processes because they don't have the context, and that's not where the data is.
Yeah, or another simple, highly simplified version to look at this: a wrapper, an AI technology that works on top of Element will not have all the bells and whistles the Element has. Therefore, when you put, let's say, a wrapper around Element, if you wanted to do that, there's certain things that you will not get, and similar to whatever grounding technology you have there. So that's kind of how you should start seeing that.
Correct. Yes. So data gravity is the first one you should evaluate. The second one is what we call the action surface. And really this means, where does the AI take action, right? We're talking about, again, workflow agentic work. Chat window, it suggests stuff to you. If you have an in-app buttons, right? We talked about Copilot, those are assist, so you can assist stuff. Or you have cross-system automations, and that's the act part.
Suggest, assist, act. I like that.
Right. So if you think about where the ROI rises, it rises as you get closer to the decision boundary, meaning that you need to get closer and closer to the decision that's being made around a particular workflow. So, again, the governance bar gets raised because the more of these systems, the surface, or the more the action happens closer to the data, the more you have to understand and have a human in the loop and kind of have very complex systems and intelligence to know that it's doing the right thing, right? So the example is, if you're sending autonomously email out, to students, a lot of the time folks want to understand, well, what is it actually sending? Like, I want to read the messages. Is it writing the right thing? Is it pulling the data from the right place? Is it using the right context of that student? But the higher ROI, right? The closer the decision boundary is, and the higher the governance is. So that action surface, you look at it that way. I mean, just to simplify this a little bit more, if you think about, the highest level of ROI means that the AI is also the highest risk. So you need to make sure that you're using vendors that understand the data sources, understand the context, understand the data objects, have governance built into the system. So the higher the ROI, the more complex the decisioning and the agents are. Hence, the more credibility you need to have in that vendor. So usually AI wrappers, they kind of tend to fall a little shorter in here, right? So you're going to have the action surface is going to be closer because you need tools that these agents can work on. And usually those tools are tightly integrated with a platform or tightly integrated with the systems that you have, right? So a CRM, engagement platform, an LMS, and so on and so forth. In this case, which is also really interesting, is that coding agents have begun to become vibe coding agents and so on and so forth. So they're writing code. And sometimes if you integrate them with your database, there's been examples where those coding agents have erased the whole database altogether. So you got to be careful on what are the boundaries that you're putting them in. Like how much, like, do they have data, human in the loop? Do they have kind of security and so on and so forth? So this is very, very important.
Ardis, let me just build a picture as you go into the third one. As you're trying to solve the problems and you understand how this technology investment will come in, the first question that you're asking is, I want AI to just read my data, right? And do AI things with it. And you'll solve problems that way and you will get impact that way. That's been your latest point. As you start thinking more, I want not only the AI to read my data, but I want it to act on it, and I want it to act on it safely, right? You go into this other dimension, more the action surface, and this is where we start seeing the boundary of ROI. And to your point about the governance bars, start increasing and creeping up, because it is in this stage that the highest adoption rates or the lack of adoption starts to creep up, right? Because you need to go all in. You use the word, the risk starts to basically showcase. Yeah, and AI starts getting transformative in your enterprise. It goes from features to process in culture. It becomes not only technology, but it becomes technology and the people that work with it. So actually that's the stage for your third dimension, right? The autonomy layer. So say more about it.
Right. So the autonomy ladder. So it's not a layer, ladder. It's ladders.
Ladder. Well, layer, ladder, potato,
Layer, ladder,
potato.
same thing. So when you think about how autonomous these systems are, so how much work are they able to do without the intervention of a person or someone? We take coding agents right now, and the way that those coding agents are measured are how many minutes can they do work without actually having somebody take a look at it or producing work. There's some of these agentic that go 200 minutes or whatever. But in this case, what we're talking about, you evaluate a solution, an AI solution based on the autonomy layer, which is the third one. How much human intervention do you need? The first one is like, okay, you can think about, hey, you have an AI solution that just suggests something to me, right? It does that very fast, and it's very autonomous. It's just suggesting, but I have to then take and do all the things that it's suggesting to me. So think about that as a tier one or like an autonomy one step. The second step is, you think about it as it's actually assisting me in doing that work. So it's suggesting, and then it's saying, okay, let's just do this work, and it's doing that work with you. So that's the co-pilot mentality of how we think about it. But different tools have different ladders of autonomy. And then the last one, maybe you can think about it, and I like to do things in three. It's this notion of acting, right? So it acts with approvals and rollbacks and so on and so forth. So the act part, it just does everything for you without you even having to tell it what to do, or without you having to, constantly monitor it, right? So that's the third layer. It's like it just does things autonomously. So this is where you think about goal-oriented AI, and you think about proactive AI solutions. This is the part where they're replacing the intelligence of or the job of a human that they have to do, and then it's autonomous and doing things. So autonomy layer is very, very important as you evaluate different solutions, because an AI solution can come in and say, hey, we're amazing. We do this, this, and this. But it's like, okay, but you actually have to take the output and go implement it yourself. Like you have to run all the commands and you have to do all these things. And it's like, well, that's not really what I wanted, right? And it really depends on where you are in that lab, but that's how you evaluate it. Where's the data? How much action can these things take? Like, where is the action surface? Meaning, like, where are the tools that these agents are using? Like, are they closer to the data? Are they baked in, or do you need to incorporate different things? And then the last one is, how autonomous are these agents and the solutions? Like, are they just able to suggest things, or able to like work together with you, or are they just doing the thing automatically for you, which is the highest ROI there? Okay, what do you think?
Oh, I mean, first of all, I love that you've been saying a layer instead of a ladder, so I got into your mind. Number two, let me all put it together, man. So because I think it's very powerful what you just presented, right? When you combine these three axes, right, of data gravity, action, surface, and the autonomy ladder, you get this map of readiness. And as you mentioned, the framework now unpacks as four questions. What can this AI do? Right? Where does it act? What can it touch? And as you mentioned, like how far can it go, right? And we'll talk about trust and things like that, but what does it do? Where does it act? What can it touch? And how far do we want it to go? That makes the framework of buying like these categories and the all build out making a lot of sense. So the powerful thing about the conversation we've been having is this idea that within the three axes, right? Data gravity, action surface, and autonomy layer, you end up with a map of readiness. You want AI, the different product categories that you want, either as a general assistant or fully agentic workflows, right? Those layers that we also have, allow you to build your strategy, your readiness, as per the problems that you're trying to solve. But what the conversation we just have, it's very important. And in the foundations that we're giving you, not only think about the technology that you're bringing against the problems that you're trying to solve, but you're answering always these four questions, right? What can this AI do? Number two, where does it act? Three, what can it touch? And last but not least, how far do you want it to go, right? And in a way, this is what our conversation has been around with what we call axis of decision making, the product categories, and in a review of the landscape of current technology today. So that's what episode 1 of the series is. Ardis, how does this build into series 2, and what should we expect on the next episode?
Right. So series 2, we're gonna kind of talk about, how do you practically take a look at the demo, and what's essentially the landscape of the different AI vendors and what's happening there. So that's essentially episode 2. It's like, how do you compare? How do you evaluate AI? And what are the short lists of things that you should be looking for? So we're gonna start thinking about the use case approach, right? The playbook and the use case approach. Like, what are you trying to do? And then where do all these different vendors stack up and where they list? So like, what are the questions you should be asking your vendors, and so on and so forth. So that's episode 2. Like, we're going to go a little bit deeper into that. And it's going to be a little bit more practical. So today we just gave you the foundation and how to think about it and the different axes. We'll do a little bit of recap next episode, but we're going to get deeper into how do you differentiate in a crowded market by using some of those frameworks that we're giving you, based on the questions, based on the autonomy, and based on kind of the goals that you're trying to get, so you can backtrack into finding the right solution for you.
Love that. So episode 2, don't buy a demo, but bring all these conversation, informing the decision with intentional. So intentionality in AI acquisition, investment, and deployment. Ardis, fantastic episode. Thanks for the conversation. I hope you're feeling much better, and enjoy the conference.
Thank you, sir. More to come. Thanks, everybody. Until next time.
Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.